Hello, and welcome to the Polyapp installation guide. In this guide, I want to show you how to use Polyapp, which is a business-oriented form builder, which you can use to create pretty complicated forms, including Polyapp itself. And I want to show you how to install it. The first thing you're going to have to do is come to the Git repository and go to the Try It Out section. And it's going to explain that we're going to try to be using a free tier of Google Cloud in order to install Polyapp. Right now, Polyapp isn't supported outside of Google Cloud due to the need to use Google Cloud's Firestore database. And there's a nice installation script, and there are some steps to get started. So first, you may need a Google account if you don't have one. If you have a Google account, the next thing you'll need is a Google Cloud account. Google Cloud accounts you can create from this page, and you can use their free tier and their starting credit, which is a couple $100 in order to get started. And after you've done that, you're going to want to enable billing. Polyapp needs billing because it takes or utilizes certain resources which could eventually incur a charge if you were to use enough of them. For instance, it utilizes Google Cloud buckets, which are a lot like Amazon's S3 simple storage service. And if you were to store, for instance, a lot of images or a lot of videos in a Polyapp, you'd end up incurring some charges. All right, so after you've done all of that, which I've already done all of those things, so I'm going to skip those steps, you want to go to the shell, and you're going to clone the repository. First thing I'm actually going to do is remove my existing clone of the repository. All right, this will probably take a bit longer for you. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to start a new tab now. Just going to open it without any project associated with it. This is probably what you will encounter when you first open Cloud Shell. And we're just going to clone Polyapp in here. And we're going to go into the directory and run the Google Cloud install shell script. And there's this little installation program which helps to install into Google Cloud, hopefully without breaking anything, and it tells you how to restart the program. And finally, it asks you to enter a Google Cloud project ID if you want to use that project. But I want it to create a new project, so I just hit enter. And we can see it's creating this project, Polyapp-968727027, etc. This is just a random number. It enabled a service on that project. It added this billing account to the project. Remember, I already had a billing account set up. And it began the Firebase setup. So Firebase is used by Polyapp for authentication. And it says, although we have automatically set up Firebase, we haven't automatically configured Firebase authentication. You need to do this manually. Unfortunately, there is no way to do this step automatically, so you do have to come here and do it manually. And there are step-by-step instructions, like click on Get Started. Enable the 3 options. It's very important that you enable each one of these. The email password option is used for the default administrator, which if you don't get access to the default administrator, it can be difficult to add additional users. You use the Google for most users, at least that's what I do, and that did not quite get added. Let's try that again. We've got to enable that. All right, and you should enable anonymous, which maybe you could argue isn't really necessary for Polyapp to have, but it is necessary right now for the installation process. All right, so we're just going to grab this. The Cloud Shell automatically copies when you highlight things. I'm going to just paste this into here. So authorized domains basically means that we'll be able to access Firebase Authentication when we're on this website. So if you were to add a public IP address, or you were to add, and then you were to connect this to your own domain, you would want to add your own domain here. All right, so I've added under authorized domains, and it says now we're done with setting up Firebase. Polyapp will now be able to authenticate your identity. The remaining steps will have you manually handle Google Cloud deployment options. And I hit enter, and in fact, it asks me for the region where you want your application to be deployed. This controls where your Firestore database will get deployed and where your App Engine application gets deployed, and it can end up affecting other things as well. We just want to make sure that everything's in the same region, in the same place, so that it communicates as quickly as possible. So I live in the central region, so I'm going to put it in the central. All right, and then it's creating. You can close out of this Firebase console if you want. All right, and now occasionally it's going to ask us to enable an API, which hasn't been enabled on the project yet. And whenever you see one of these prompts, just hit Y and hit enter. Okay, so it ended up going through what's actually going on here. So it deployed our application. Wait, no, the first thing it did was it created the Cloud Firestore native database for our project. Then it, oh yes, and then for that database, it added several indexes. And these indexes are important for Polyapp to function. Luckily, we can add them automatically. Then created this storage bucket. So I talked before about how one way that Polyapp could end up costing you money is if you put a bunch of images into Polyapp. And when you store images or other large blobs in Polyapp, like videos or anything that's going to exceed a few kilobytes in size, it's going to get stored into a Google Cloud storage bucket. And this is the storage bucket it's going to get stored into. It's just a random number. All right, and then we can see it started to deploy our service. So it started to deploy Polyapp. We can see it's still working on that. So if you think about it from a stack perspective. Polyapp uses two different places to store data. It utilizes the Firestore database, which just got set up here, and it utilizes the Google Cloud storage bucket, which was set up around here. So the next part we're going to want to add is the web server, and since we're using App Engine to host the application, we need to deploy our application onto App Engine, and that's what's currently going on. And this process takes a little while. So while we're waiting, I'm going to come back here and just talk a little bit about what you might actually do after you've gotten Polyapp running. So the initial installation of Polyapp won't come with any tasks that are interesting per se. I mean, it'll have tasks that let you create new tasks, and it will have tasks that let you create bots and actions and new users and new roles that'll help you with authentication and authorization, a lot of administrative things. But it's not going to have any tasks which are like super duper, practical. And although you can probably get some tasks from like the task hub, probably the first thing you're going to want to end up doing is building your own task, just so that you get a feel for how you do that. And I guess that since I'm waiting for a long time, I might as well just show you how to build a task, just so that when we are finally ready to go, I won't have to show this to you. So I'm just going to run Polyapp on my local machine. Localhost. I'll wait for it to load here. Alright, so when we finally get it installed, it's going to look like this. In order to create your own task, you want to click on Edit Tasks, and then this Create Data button. And then from here, you'll be taken to the Edit Task task, which I know sounds a bit repetitive, but you'll be able to name the task, add some help text, and do everything else you might want to do in order to create a task. And I think it's a good practice to, after you first install Polyapp, to create your first task, just so that you get a feel for how you create tasks in the system. You know, how do you navigate to tasks in the system? For instance, you can click here to change like industry and domain. If you look back at the task creator, you set industry and domain here. So you have to know exactly the domain that you're going into, and you have to come into here and choose the task that you want to work on. And so let's say I wanted to work on the bot task. And then you would see the existing data associated with the bot task. So these are bots I've created: delete admin, delete data, edit bot, edit, yeah, this is the bot which edits bots, edit task, the bot associated with editing tasks. And you would then be able to choose one of these and then work on the form. Or you could always create data again, just like how when you're at the edit task, you create the data in order to start making a new task. You would create the data in order to create a new bot. Okay, whoops. So that's the basic idea of what you want to do in order to create a task. You basically go to the edit task, and you fill it out. But let's go back to the installation process. The installation process has finished, which is nice. It also finished the update, which is also nice. And it says you can go here to open Polyapp. There's this little bit of what to do after opening Polyapp. It tells you might want to go to sign out, which you actually don't have to because it brings you straight to the sign in page. And then it says to sign in with this email and that password. And this is the default email and password. And then it tells you the first thing you should do is go to home, which this is the home page, edit users. You're going to want to click on this user, and you're going to want to change its password because obviously Polyapp is not a very secure password. So I assume you will set it to something better than this. But you would then hit done, and it would bring us back here. And then we could sign in again. Okay. That's the gist of how to get started with Polyapp. We walked through how to do the installation process. And if you have any questions about the installation process or the installation program, you're welcome to contact me. My contact information is in the README. And in the event that you have any issues you want to add to the project, you're welcome to go to the issues list in GitLab and create a new issue. All right, thanks for watching.